Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating contradictions in all of political philosophy. We're going to unpack the ideas of Thomas Hobbes and a puzzle that, believe it or not, still shapes our world today. Okay, so let's jump right into the big puzzle here. How can the exact same thinker be seen as both a champion for all-powerful rulers and, at the very same time, a pioneer of individual rights? I mean, it sounds like a total contradiction, right? A real head-scratcher. So you've got one side of the coin where Hobbes is famous for pushing for an absolute monarchy, a state with total power. But then, if you dig just a little deeper, his philosophy has the very seeds of what we now call liberalism and individual freedom. So which is it? How can both of these things possibly be true? All right, to even begin to solve this paradox, we have to understand the terrifying problem Hobbes was trying to fix in the first place. And to do that, we need to go back to his famous thought experiment, the state of nature. Okay, I want you to picture this for a second. A world with no government, no police, no laws, a world of just complete and total freedom, where every single person can do whatever they want, whenever they want. Sounds kind of great, doesn't it? Well, Hobbes had let's just say, a radically different and much darker take on it. Because, you see, in this state of absolute freedom, there's absolutely nothing stopping anyone from stealing your stuff, taking your home, or, worse. It becomes what he famously called a war of all against all. And this total freedom, Hobbes argued, leads to a life of constant grinding fear, where your only real goal is just staying alive. So, how do you get out of this brutal, chaotic mess? What was Hobbes' big idea? Well, he proposed something radical, a social contract, an agreement that would, and this is no exaggeration, change human society forever. His argument was that rational, self-interested people would actually willingly make a deal. They'd agree to give up nearly all of their natural freedoms to one absolute authority, a king, or what he famously called the Leviathan. And this just brilliantly lays out the cold, hard logic of it all. This isn't about morality. It's not about the divine right of kings or anything like that. It's a straight-up, pragmatic trade-off. People are so terrified of dying a violent death that they agree to hand over all their power to one single ruler. And what do they get in exchange for this total obedience? The one thing they desperately want and can't get on their own: security. And this is where that architect of tyranny argument really sinks its teeth in. Because once you make that deal, that's it. It's done. The sovereign's power is absolute. The individual becomes, for all intents and purposes, a subject, and your personal freedoms, they just can't be allowed to get in the way of the state's #1 job, keeping the peace. Okay, so that sounds pretty bleak, right? Absolute power, zero rights, but hold on. That's not the whole story. And this is where Hobbes gets really clever. It turns out giving up your freedom doesn't actually mean giving up, all of it. This brings us to a really fascinating idea. This concept of freedom in the silences of the law. What Hobbes is saying is that in any area where the sovereign hasn't bothered to make a specific law, you're completely free. You can do as you please. And this is a huge and honestly often overlooked part of his whole theory. And look at how specific he gets. He's not being vague about this at all. He explicitly lists things like the freedom to do business, to contract with people, to choose where you live, what you eat, your job. He even says you have the right to not hurt yourself or confess to a crime, even if the king tells you to. What this does is it creates this kind of protected, private space where you, the individual, can operate, even inside this all-powerful state. So here's the absolute bottom line, the crucial point. There is one right you can never give away, and that's the right to save your own life. Think of it as the ultimate non-negotiable term in the contract. I mean, the whole reason you made the deal was to escape a violent death. So if the sovereign turns around and threatens to kill you, the deal's off. The contract is broken. And at that point, you have the right to resist. Okay, so let's get to the idea that finally ties all these threads together and solves our big paradox. It's a concept called possessive individualism. Now, this is the key that really unlocks Hobbes' thinking. For him, society isn't some big organic community. Nope. It's just a collection of individuals, and each individual is the sole, absolute owner of themselves, their body, their skills, their work. So freedom isn't some abstract, high-minded ideal. It's a thing. It's a piece of property that you own. And since freedom is a possession, What can you do with possessions? You can transfer them. So in that social contract, you're not getting rid of your freedom. You're just transferring the deed, so to speak. You're handing ownership of it over to the sovereign. The king now literally possesses the collective freedom and rights of everyone. So think about it. The liberty you get to enjoy, to trade, to pick your own house, that's not a natural right anymore. It's basically a gift from the sovereign. It's a freedom that's been granted back to you, mostly because having productive, prosperous people doesn't really threaten the peace. Now, it has to be said, Hobbes only really hinted at some of these implications, but boy, are they enormous.
And this elegant, even if it is a bit unsettling, solution to the problem of keeping order, well, it's left a huge mark on the world. It's exactly why we're still talking about and debating him centuries later.
Yeah, people call him anti-democratic, but you can't deny his contributions are revolutionary. He laid down one of the very first systematic theories of what state power is. He basically kick-started the entire conversation about the rights of man, and he argued fiercely for separating church and state. He really was a thoroughly modern thinker, ahead of his time in many ways. And really, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that the core problem Hobbes pointed out is still right at the heart of our biggest debates today. I mean, every time we argue about government surveillance, or online privacy, or public health rules, we are wrestling with Hobbes's ghost. We're still trying to draw that line between the authority of the state and our own individual liberty. Which leaves us with one last, very provocative thought. It's the question Hobbes forced the world to ask, and a question we are all, in our own way, still trying to answer. So let me ask you, how much of your own personal freedom are you willing to trade for total security?